Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Week in Cleantech, your favorite 15-minute roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy each week. Today is Friday, June 5th, 2026. We've got a guest in waiting. Benjamin Storrow from E&E News is joining us shortly. I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. On location this week, Mike, I hear big, loud air conditioners in your background. Where are you?
I am in Houston, Texas for the...
you need them out there.
Yeah, you do. It is... global climate disruption is no hoax, my friend. I can tell you, because it is... You don't want to walk more than 4 blocks out here, or else you're going to look like you ran a mile. So,
in general, I try to adhere to that. But yeah, great advice in Houston, Texas when it starts to get warm.
I want to give a shout out to Daniel Deuce from Cleantech Industry Resources, and Scott Wharton, CEO of Tandem PV, stopped me in the hall, said he loves the show. So awesome. And Paul, I admit to being obnoxious and sending you that fan video because I know you never get any. And I get them all the time. In fact, I've gotten hundreds of them here. So I just
you sent me a fan video?
I did.
Well, where did you send it to me?
I sent it to the group chat.
To the group chat.
You saw it.
I left them on red. Oh, that's a tough thing to admit on the podcast.
And listen, I'm going to be the bigger one here. Let's just keep going with the show. Let's give our millions of listeners what they want.
Yeah. We like it when you give us our roses too. As always, you'll get shouted out on the show like Casey just did. If you want to hear a story covered or you have something nice to say, only nice things. The other stuff we won't read. Email us at TWIC@tigercomm with 2Ms.us. As always, we've got headlines, the 5 biggest ones in clean energy and clean technology this week. Mike, get us started with headline number 1. Where are you taking us?
A former guest, Emily Pontecarvo, Heatmap, she writes, the sorry state of carbon removal. Paul, you're not in a sorry state, are you?
I'm just exhausted. I'm in an exhausted state. I was complaining to producer Brian Mendez before we started the show that I'm just toast right now. We really love to take a nap after this taping. So the quicker I read what I have to say, the quicker I can do that. So Emily's story, if you haven't read it, a state of carbon dioxide removal report, mouthful to say, finds the sector is growing, but not fast enough to meet Paris Agreement targets. Humans currently remove about 2.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. That's about 5% of annual pollution rates, almost entirely through conventional methods like tree planting, forest management, wetland restoration, things like that. Novel methods like direct air capture, or DAC, biochar, and enhanced weathering grew from 1.4 million tons in 2023 to about 2 million tons in 2025. Some growth, not nearly enough, Mike. They need to hit 70 million by 2030, 360 million by 2035. So hockey stick growth in order for the world to achieve net zero, according to the report authors. Biochar, if you're curious, accounts for most of that novel removal growth, not something we talk about a ton on this program. The most optimistic corporate projections, Mike, put 2030 novel removal capacity at only 42 million tons, far from the goal. Actual construction pipelines imply only about a fifth of that. Mike, your thoughts?
So funding for carbon removal, it is very concentrated. Microsoft alone accounts for over 80% of all carbon removal purchases to date, and it paused that procurement in April. Bit of a problem. Government support has been mostly limited to the U.S., Sweden, and Denmark, with the U.S. now pulling back, not surprisingly. Direct air capture, otherwise known as DAC, removed just 1,500 tons in all of 2025, all from ClimateWorks' 2 Iceland facilities far below their 40,000-ton design capacity. Research, investment, policy are trending up, but demand is weak. Paul, story number 2.
Story number 2 this week is from Leland Argy from The Guardian, titled Solar Energy Helps U.S. Farms Stay Afloat, but Republicans' bill could change that. What's in it?
Okay, U.S. House Farm Bill, big piece of legislation. It would block federal funding for ground-mounted solar on prime farmland, a big deal for farmers who rely on USDA grants as a financial lifeline during tough times. The administration has also canceled $7 billion in Biden-era funding for affordable solar projects, prompting a lawsuit by over a dozen state attorney generals. Even farms that qualify for exemptions get cut off if their panels include components made in China, which produces 80% of the world's solar panels. Critics say that's essentially a ban in disguise, and it hits small farmers the hardest. Paul, your thoughts?
Well, large solar projects have created a bit of tension in rural communities over land access and affordability, but restricting federal support for farmers who just want to keep their operations running doesn't really fix that. Agrivoltaics projects face the same restrictions, even though farm groups broadly support them as a way to bring in some extra income without taking land fully out of production. The provision is also a bit confusing, so farmers might not even know whether their projects qualify for exemptions. The Senate is expected to begin marking up its own version sometime later in June. Mike, story number 3.
Catherine Blunt, Wall Street Journal. We've had her on before. America's data center build-out is falling way behind schedule. I got to tell you, Paul, if there is one topic that has been consistently discussed here in these halls, it is data centers.
Yeah, it's pervasive in my own halls as well, Mike. It's data centers left and right. And lately, I've been seeing a lot of stories similar to what Catherine wrote in the Wall Street Journal about some build out falling way behind expected pace. Tech companies are pouring, as you may know, unprecedented capital into artificial intelligence data centers, but they're facing all kinds of challenges, supply chain backlogs, permitting fights, power shortages. It's causing major delays, and therefore, since time is money, they're losing money. JP Morgan finds over 60% of capacity planned for next year, 2027, is not yet under construction, and another 7% or more is delayed. Google has taken its own approach to breaking through these bottlenecks by leveraging its own power generation and shifting computing to where power is available. We've seen some folks bring their own power, Mike. Not many have the resources to do so, especially quickly or at scale. The company Google, in this context, pointed to 42 energy deals in the past year, planning to add another $70 billion in capital expenditures this year. $70 billion. I said that number too fast. It's too big to take lightly. Berkshire Hathaway separately purchased $700 million in Google shares after that announcement. Getting grid operators to approve connections is a challenge. Data centers require a lot of power, like medium-sized city power, threatening to strain the grid during periods of high electricity demand and all the time as more and more of them come online. The DOE has yet to sign off on whether any given project could cause problems for the system, but we're starting to see it more and more, and regulations like NERC are starting to, them and their regional entities, crack down on data centers and say, hey, we can't just have these large loads coming on and off the grid. Mike, I know I've been talking for a minute. Your thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, so I heard a speaker last night say that the demand for computing is essentially infinite. That's the projection. Just let that kind of sink in. So other tech giants, they're trying to break through the same bottlenecks. Microsoft, for example, has inked a deal to purchase power from Constellation Energy's restart of the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor. Republican state officials and power companies are also developing plans to build data centers alongside new power sources, but those projects still require DOE approval to ensure they won't destabilize the grid. And just this week, Google announced a 3-year deal with demand response company Voltus to help stabilize the grid during periods of peak demand, an agreement that could curtail as much as 100 megawatts of electricity. Paul, our fourth story.
Story 4 this week, Julia Jacobo from ABC News. 7 states sue Trump administration over nearly $1 billion deal to halt offshore wind farm. Another lawsuit involving offshore wind and the Trump administration. Perhaps, Mike Casey, one reaps what one sows.
Yeah. 7 northeastern states. They filed a lawsuit on Tuesday accusing the Trump administration of illegally using $1 billion of our money to kill offshore wind deals off the East Coast. The deal, struck in March, had the Interior Department saying Total Energies got $928 million. Here you go. Just to halt construction of offshore wind farms off New York and North Carolina and to redirect that investment into fossil fuels. The lawsuit alleges $795 million reimbursement was drawn from the judgment fund, which states say was an unlawful use of those funds. The filing also accuses the deal of violating the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, which restricts Interior's ability to cancel offshore wind leases. The Interior Department pushed back, saying the only thing, quote, blatantly unlawful, unquote, was how the Biden administration negotiated the original leases, and the settlements were reviewed and approved by the Justice Department. The department's also cited serious national security risks from the projects, though they have never been able to say what these imaginary security risks are. Paul, your thoughts?
My thoughts are too numerous for a roughly 15-minute show, so I'll stick to two key talking points. The administration framed the deal as lowering energy costs and strengthening energy security. States have argued it does the opposite, depriving them of, in some cases, gigawatts of power that they were counting on in their long-term plans. And as we've talked about on this show a few times, Total Energies, I read it still in my head as Total Energies, like it's a cereal or something, but Total Energies is not the first wind developer this administration has paid to walk away. We've talked about previous large sums of money. It feels almost like a mob thing, Mike, where it's like, here, just take this money and go away from this project that was about to help millions of people. Likely won't be the last, unfortunately. We can't talk about it anymore, though, because Ben Storrow is tired of waiting. Mike, our last story.
And who's not a mobster is Ben Storrow. He and Scott Waldman are reporters for E&E News.
There
and
you
they
go.
wrote a story, Ready to Cave, How Liberal Governors Warmed to Trump's Pipelines. Hey, Ben, welcome to the show. Really like having you. Thank you for putting up with us in our pre-show antics. There are many and annoying, but hey, we want people to read this story. It's really good reporting. If they haven't had a chance yet, what's the big bottom line takeaway?
The takeaway is that the governors really in southern New England, what we're talking about, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, have been putting out a lot of signals saying that they're open to considering pipelines. The big question that remains is what exactly that looks like, whether we're talking about greenfield projects or whether we're talking about expansions, the size. There's a lot of unknowns, but just the mere sort of rhetoric and the political signaling is a really big shift, particularly in Massachusetts, where Governor Healy had, really sort of tried to stake herself out as a pipeline opponent in the past.
Ben, from what you were able to gather, are these pipelines really necessary? Is there a big demand or an otherwise like a need here other than the Trump administration's demand that's how we get even on whatever was negotiated here?
I mean, this is a long-standing debate in New England. I think it's a region that burns a lot of natural gas, both for electricity and for heating. And I think, there's two things outside of the politics that have really changed. One is, just the pace of development for offshore wind, going to what you guys are talking about, and some of the transmission project in Maine linking the region to Canada. It took a decade. We have two offshore wind projects serving New England that are probably going to come online this year. But it took so long. I think the region is looking around, and it has previously used oil and LNG as backup to make do because of this limited pipeline capacity. And so the question I think a lot of people in the region are asking is, if you can't do offshore wind, if it takes so long to do these transmission projects, maybe we do want to do natural gas. The other thing that goes to what you guys are talking about that is a big sea change is electricity demand. Now, most of it in New England isn't due to things like data centers. Power's too expensive in New England to really have a lot of data center development. But because of electrification, ISO New England is projecting gradual, electricity demand growth, which is a really big shift for a region which, because of energy efficiency and rooftop solar, had been seeing demand go down. So I think that's sort of the underlying sort of dynamics. And then you add in Trump and the whole political dynamic, and I think that's how you get to where we are today.
Ben, did you find in your reporting there is an interest, a company that would particularly benefit from these pipelines, or is it a cast of many?
I mean, I think the two central players are Enbridge, who are the operators of the Algonquin pipeline, They are, they've definitely been active. We've reported that they met with the White House. They're clearly talking with the governors as well. And, what they're targeting is about a 10% expansion of New England's largest existing pipeline. The sense that I get from people is that is probably if there's a project that's going to be done, it would probably be that one. The other project that's out there that I think that I've encountered a lot of skepticism from people in New England is the Constitution pipeline in New York, running from Pennsylvania to just outside of Albany. You would need some additional investment to get that gas into New England. It's sort of interesting. That project gets pitched as like a project to bring gas to New England. It actually wouldn't. You would need additional investment. And I think just the political lift makes that harder. But we can't say at this point where the governors or the companies or the administration is going to end up, but that's just the sense sort of that I've gotten from talking to people so far.
Ben, if we got time for one more, has anything from these liberal governors been floated as sort of like an exchange for opening up conversations about these pipelines? We've heard stories about maybe advancing some of their own clean energy goals by sort of caving on this issue.
It's funny that's a really funny question, just because in the wake of this piece, I've been asked multiple times by people that exact question. And it is obviously one of the questions that I've had. And, clearly last year, in the case of Connecticut, when Revolution Wind got stopped, Governor Lamont was having those types of conversations with the Trump administration. What I can tell you is, to answer your question in brief, I don't know. I don't know. I think but the thing I can tell you that's sort of interesting and that I've picked up on within the clean energy community and the environmental community in New England is, if the governors are gonna, engage with Trump on this, why aren't they asking for the moon? Like, give us our offshore wind, give us, our transmission projects. That's what we want. That's what we're going to, if you want your pipeline, and a lot of people, and this is why I kept getting this question, because that's what people wanted to know. Are they pushing for that deal? I have no indication really that they are. That doesn't mean anything, but it is one of the big questions out there.
I'm an everyman. I ask the people's questions, Mike
You
Casey.
are, Paul. You are.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that.
It's good you came out. Good you came down off Mount Olympus to live amongst the people where you belong. That's really good.
Something like
but
that.
Your Highness, we do have to go to our Cleantecher of the week.
All right, stick around for just a second, Ben. Our Cleantecher of the week, Kevin Doffing this week. He runs a group of veterans involved in clean tech. He's got 50 caliber shell casings that he uses as lobby swag. Mike's over there nodding. Yeah,
cool.
You wrote this, didn't you?
I did.
Congrats to Kevin Doffing, our Cleantecher
These
of
things
the
are
week.
so cool. They have on the side, they say, energy security is national security.
There you go.
They're super cool. Anyway, I want to give him a shout out. He's a buddy of mine. So I also want to thank our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez, and Alex Peterson and Claire Quirin for helping gather these stories.
Yeah, appreciate you guys accommodating our schedules this week, too, with Mike out on assignment. Where are you again, Mike?
I'm in Houston at Clean Power.
Clean Power. Go say hi to Mike if you're out there, and he's still around. By the time you're listening to this, it's likely he's not. So actually, don't waste your time. But anyway, you'll find us back right here next week on This Week in Clean Tech. You won't see Ben, but one more shout out to him for joining this week's episode. Please subscribe, leave a little feedback, share a story suggestion if you enjoyed the last 15 minutes or so. You can read all the articles we talk about every week. They're in links in the episode description as well as in the post where this thing lives on factorthis.com. Until next time. Be good, people.
Ben, if you come back, I'll make sure Paul's better behaved. How's that for a deal? All right. Great story. Thank you all. See you next week.